Now we're going to take a look at politics, and to do that, we're going to bring in retired Navy Captain Armen Kurdian for a conversation. Armen, thank you so very much for dropping by the Live Zone with us here today, sir.
Good morning. I love this show.
Yes, sir. Armen, we'll get started here. President Trump, he's going to mark 100 days in office next week. The latest Fox News polling found that border security is the only issue where a majority of voters approve of Trump's work. Overall, more voters disapprove when it comes to his handling of the economy, of inflation, of tariffs, and of foreign policy. How should the president react, and does he need to change course on his approach to his second term?
Well, I think history has shown that Donald Trump doesn't necessarily care about what people say. It's natural for a lot of folks to be hesitant or concerned about what they've seen so far because America has basically been living on borrowing from its future for so very long. And we just continued on down this path where manufacturing has continued to atrophy. We've borrowed money that's not going to be earned in taxpayer dollars in 8 years. And it's natural when the spigot gets turned off that people might be upset about it. So I wouldn't necessarily be too concerned. He has to keep it in mind that he doesn't want to cause some kind of recession going forward, but I don't think that's going to happen. He understands what's at stake. He is a deal maker. He loves making deals. This is how he thrives. This is where he goes forward. Tariffs looks like the whole tariff conversation is petering down a little bit. It's going to be a lot more focused as to where it needs to be. So I think things are tracking as to where he expected, and I'm really not surprised as to what the public polling is right now.
A quick follow-up to that, Armen, and I'm going to ask you your opinion on this. How long does this administration have? Like, what is the grace period, being that they did just get into office not too long ago? What's the grace period before people truly do begin to become upset?
I think the grace period is really a little bit more political in nature, and I think the grace period is going to end summer of 2026 because that's when the midterm election season really is going to be ramping up. You don't want to see the economy contracting. You don't want to see interest rates as high as they are right now. You want to see jobs being created. You want to see manufacturing coming back. So he's really got a little bit more than a year in order to positively affect change, and that should be enough time to make this actually happen. So. And in fact, that is his grace period. If he shows results, then it'll be a good year for Republicans. If not, then folks are going to have to go back and consider whether or what they experienced over the previous 4 years is really more desirable than what they've experienced so far.
Midterm elections, always that barometer there. So thank you on that. Let's go ahead and flip the page now and talk a little bit about Ukraine. Now, we know that a potential peace deal is at risk in Ukraine after Russia launched its deadliest attack on the Kyiv in months. The attack comes after President Trump said that he believed that Russia was ready for peace and accused Ukraine's president of being the holdout. Yesterday, President Trump posted to Truth Social criticizing Russia, saying he was not happy, quote unquote, with the strikes. Trump and Zelensky will both be in Rome for the funeral of Pope Francis. Is there any hope for a deal to be reached now, Armen?
Donald Trump plays a lot of chess in his head, and only he really knows what's going on. You might actually think that perhaps this was his plan to get to this point, but I believe he's finding that it actually is a lot harder to get Russia to the table, and the only way to do that is to compel them or force them. You're not going to cajole them or persuade them to get to the table. So long as Putin believes that there is a chance that the West will not go all in to effect a peace, they're going to continue to prosecute the war, despite the fact that Russia is experiencing 3 or 4 times greater losses than Ukraine. They have an economy that's about 10 times the size of Ukraine, and Ukraine still hasn't gone all in on its war because it's limited conscription age, only 25 years old. They've got to lower that. So they've got to go all in as well. If the U.S. really wants peace, if the West really wants peace, if the European nations really want peace, then they've got to arm Ukraine to the teeth and make it absolutely cost prohibitive for Russia to continue this war. I honestly think that's about the only way that this is going to end. I don't see Russia stopping until they see that the cost is going to be too high for them to continue.
Wow. Wow. That is very news that people need to take a look at. I want to go ahead now and talk about Pete Hegseth. This is a man who has been in the news probably more often than he would like to have been for the reasons that he has been so. And sources say that the defense secretary has an unsecured connection in his office to use the Signal app. This after revelations that he shared military plans in another group chat with his wife and brother. Now, how concerning is this, and at what point might they consider replacing him, or is this all much ado about nothing?
Certainly, a lot of the headlines that are coming out, especially from folks who support Hegseth and support the administration, is concerning for the president and the Secretary of Defense. And perhaps he's still got a little bit to learn about communication security. But overall, if you look at things on balance, if you look at the kind of rhetoric that's coming out about Hegseth's leadership compared to what happened 4 years ago with the Afghanistan withdrawal, or the massive foreign policy failures, which allowed the Ukraine-Russia war to continue, which allowed Iran to rearm and basically rearm Hamas, and that war continues on. It's just night and day. There is just absolutely no comparison. So certainly, it's not much ado about nothing. But relative to what's been going on, it would really be nice if folks from both parties were consistent with their criticism, because I think a lot of Americans are tired of what they perceive to be partisan politics.
Talk to me about Signal app, the Signal app. Now, again, depending on which side of the aisle that you sit on, different people speak about this in different ways. I've heard that the Signal app is something that is widely used, and then I've heard from other places that this is something that should never be used. From in your experience, how oftenly used is the Signal app in these realms?
Signal app has its own form of encryption. It's tied. It can't necessarily be very easily hacked. It's actually probably very, very challenging to do so. Uh, the bigger question is the information that's actually passed over it. So regardless of what the encryption is, whether it's WhatsApp or whatever, Google, all websites, anything, time you go to Amazon and make a purchase, there is a form of encryption that is there, which is ostensibly there to protect your personal information. And 99 times out of 100, anytime there's a breach, it's because somebody left a password open. It's because of human error, not necessarily because somebody hard hacked into it. So just like any tool, if it's not properly used, there could be a problem. You don't want to be speaking information that's greater than controlled and classified information on an unsecured channel. So that's, you have to consider that in mind when you're talking with other leadership and when you're passing information out. This doesn't keep me awake at night, as perhaps American lives at stake, and I don't see that being at risk here. There's always room for improvement, but it's not much ado about nothing, but it's certainly not much ado about everything.
There we go. So it's kind of in the middle, in the gray area there, which is really where life is typically lived. Okay, now we'll get you out of here on this, so we'll talk about something else that people don't love to talk about, that being Salmonella bacteria. Now, the U.S. Department of Agriculture says that it will not follow through with a plan meant to require companies to test for several strains of Salmonella bacteria and keep them under a certain threshold. This is one of the many deregulation efforts promised by the Trump administration. Will this hurt or help food safety standards, Armen?
Everyone needs to understand that the FDA, Department of Agriculture, has very strict testing and food protection measures that are in place right now. A lot of times when the chicken comes out of these factories, it's salmonella free. It's what happens during that transit and when it gets to the store where the salmonella may actually occur. Folks have got to understand that these types of food safety measures or workplace safety measures, they're all based on risk management, risk assessment. There's no way you can ever completely drive risk down to zero. It's simply not possible. It's cost prohibitive. The reason the Department of Agriculture is pulling back on this is because the risk reward simply isn't there. It's going to create a lot of costs, a lot of work, and a lot of burden on the chicken and poultry producers, and it's really not going to improve safety that much. It may seem like that based on the reporting, but when you really dig into it, what they already have to go through in order to demonstrate food safety is very, very strict and very tough, and some of the best in the world.
I tell you what, Armen, I feel more educated on just about everything that it is that we have talked about. I thank you so very much for lending us your time here on the Live Zone.
Thank you, sir. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so very much. You do the same. That is retired Navy Captain Armen Kurdian giving us his outlook on everything politics and beyond.